I think it was 6 years ago when John and Cynthia allowed me to use this space to hold what was probably one of my first exhibitions, independent of a gallery or museum. I knew then that space had the capacity to help people think differently about an idea. That with the availability of space, things could happen. And that often, what I had noticed living in Chicago is that when one doesn't own space, when a person doesn't have space, it becomes very difficult to do anything except what the person who owns the space will allow you. That there's a certain kind of limitation of freedom. Either the limitation of freedom is because we only have 800 square feet, or the limitations are because we lack ownership. I'm not a big, like everybody has to own land guy, but what I learned from John and Cynthia was that space has the capacity to house culture. It has the capacity to kind of allow for extraordinary things to happen in very ordinary settings. But it can only happen when one has access, right? And so there are two things that I'd like to talk about. One has to do with the importance of culture for young people. That when I see, you guys were smaller and now you're taller than me, but when I see some of the young people here, they remind me a lot of my growing up on the West Side. That I grew up in Chicago Avenue, Pulaski. There wasn't a whole lot going on. The thing that was going on was there was a skating rink called Hot Wheels Roller Rink. It was my savior. In two ways it was my savior. One, my mom wouldn't let me go skating unless I went to church the week before. And so in some ways Jesus and the skating rink were kind of connected. But it was also that how I learned to be a creative person was because there was this place that I could go to almost whenever I wanted it for $2, so that I could like get in, pay the admission, and sometimes they let me in free because I was, a freewheeling roller skating little genius. That I had a place that I could take refuge from what was a very hostile West Side. Fast forward. I live on Dorchester. We, in friendship with Sarah, we've been over the last 5 years redeveloping spaces. And what I found was that, the redevelopment initially was just about creating some cultural space. We didn't give a lot of thought to what the program would be. We thought we would just facilitate programs. The value of having this kind of open space was that people could come to you and say, hey, can I have my 75th birthday party here? And, and young people started growing things in the backyards. And that I found over and over again that if we could respect the fact that young people deserve access, and that young people can identify a beautiful moment no matter where they are, and they can identify really bad moments no matter where they are. And so if we can kind of surround young people with beautiful moments more of the time, more beautiful things might happen in their lives. And so some of this is a very simple appeal. This is my appeal, separate from Sarah's, that there's no doubt that we got to get Sarah out of this 800 square feet. There's not a more fiscally solid, more generous steward of resources than Sarah. She's done more with a little bit faster. And so, just kind of dollar for dollar, I bet my dollar on Sarah anytime because I know that it's going to mean more and more young people have access to beauty and culture. The flip side of what I want to talk about, though, is about how buildings that have been abandoned, that are no longer abandoned, change the way we think about a place. That in addition to the work that Sarah will do inside this new building that we're going to raise money for, it's also the fact that that building that had been dead for a long time is now living. And that when we can create more and more living buildings, then more and more people want to live around those buildings, I found. And that if we could find ways to find a resource to anchor important cultural institutions like the South Chicago Arts Center, that other important centers want to be around cultural centers. And so we know that there's a new library. We know that there's some affordable housing happening, but there's still very limited opportunities for culture. And there's still a fair amount of underused, highly needed spaces. And I'm really excited that Sarah's going to be a part of that. And so Sarah's assembled a pretty amazing team that's giving her all of the support that she can, but she's still going to need more support. And for those of you who have not been to 91st Street, very, very, very far east, it's a place, I would call it a place that's been left behind. A place where a lot of the public and private possibility, resource, it just never ended up there. And so the value of being on 91st Street as opposed to some other major center is that because there are other people who live there that don't go further north, that aren't in Pullman, that, you know, and that really deserve access to quality education and quality opportunities. And so I've been thinking a lot about space, and I've been thinking about those spaces that are not, they're not practical. It's not a house. It's not a fire department. It's not a police station. It's not those things that are very easily justified. But at the same time, when we think about the amount of rampant violence in our city, and we try to point fingers at young black boys for that violence, I really think that it's because there have been so many neglected places that the opportunity to show love and surround people with beauty, we didn't think it was important enough. Not in our schools, not in our neighborhoods. And I think that what we're living through right now is a testament of our amnesia, of our unwillingness to deal with the fact that black kids, brown kids, all children deserve a right to culture. And so we want to help Sarah do that. And I'm on board, Sarah. And I hope that you guys are here because you also want to be a part of that. Please let's figure this out. And I think that there are going to be very, very practical ways that we can do that. To all the young people here, I'm so glad you're here. I'm so glad you're artists and makers and dancers and thinkers and dreamers. Thank you all very much.